Okay, let's do a little Chandler Jones here. And I don't think we need to say too much about this, but what he requested a trade from the Cardinals. The Cardinals obviously just went out and got J.J. Watt to be on the other side of him. There's all this talk about how good their pass rush is going to be this year. What do you think the result of that is? Do you think he ultimately gets traded? Do you think they just keep him there? Like, what's the deal?
It's so different. Like, we have so many fewer historical examples, right? Like, I remember, John Abraham was somebody who like held out from the Jets, went to the Falcons. Pass rushers are players. The edge position is a position where players can from team to team pretty easily. So you saw Khalil Mack make an impact almost immediately. Yep. You've seen guys, even like on the older stage, like Dwight Freeney was on a different team every year. Terrell Suggs helped the Chiefs win a Super Bowl. Like all that. So I think relative to other players at positions, he has a better chance of being traded, and he has a better chance of being traded sort of out of the blue. Like you come up for air, like Yannick Ngakoue last year, where it's like, oh my God, Danielle Hunter's hurt. Who's going to rush the passer? All right, let's go. The problem is that the historical comps go away because the players aforementioned, like they can't hold out or they lose a significant amount of money. And so he can't just like sit out. But I do think that there will be a team that's like, they get through the preseason, let's say, and they're like, man, we're a pass rusher away from being amazing, or we're a pass rusher away from being good. Like that's what Minnesota thought last year with Yannick. So I can see him being traded. The question becomes,
to whom?
I mean, who doesn't have a good pass rusher? Like the Colts right now? Like, let's say, what happens if Carson Wentz has an amazing, what if Carson Wentz
they did just draft Kwity Paye.
Yeah, but like we know the hit rate of edge players after a certain amount of time.
So
the Colts have a little bit of money. Probably they'd have to do some things. But what about like what if Trevor Lawrence absolutely snaps in the preseason or looks really good in trade? You're talking about a team that has $29 million in cap space, but also only $22 million tied up in like their core players for like on offense. Lawrence, Etienne, Chark. Chenault, so on and so forth. Because he's not even a rental for them, right? Like they've built such a young nucleus that they could go with him. The Panthers have a lot of cap space, but they went after Reddick and they also have Burns, who I think is a sneaky player of the year candidate. The Jets could be one. Go Lawson, Chandler Jones. Again, this is one where
it makes sense for a lot of teams.
Sometimes you just know though. Like remember, like if Zach Wilson in training camp is like, okay, this is the guy, right? And all we need, and like we have Lawson on one side and God knows who on the other, then let's go ahead and throw Chandler Jones in there and try to make a play for this, the AFC East, which I think is going to be a little weaker because the Bills are going to lose a lot of player hours to COVID. Like, let's go, that those are teams that I think have a shot. What were examples that you thought?
So I have one team that I think makes a ton of sense. And this is by far my favorite landing spot for him, and that would be the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
That he will be playing in that, be playing with Flores, who, it's a wizard on the defensive side of the ball. I believe.
Would they have to trade Xavier Howard to make this work? Because I think
that's the interesting thing is how they would make it happen. And I'm kind of like thinking about just doing some gymnastics there. That would be, for the Cardinals, that would be a really interesting move and one that I would very much support for them. But I don't know if they would have to trade him. Let me look at their cap here. But that was a place where they clearly don't have, they have defensive pieces, but the pieces that they don't really have are edge defenders. You look at Emmanuel Ogbah, who
Ogbah was like low key good last year, but
he was low key good, but like he was 48th in PFF grade last year out of like 108 players.
What about this team? And I know, God, that baseball game was so funny when they ripped on Skyline. But like, what about the Bengals?
Bengals would be very interesting.
The Bengals have the two key cornerstones on offense on rookie deals.
They just signed Sam Hubbard to an extension.
They just signed Sam Hubbard to extension. That's today. I thought when somebody said Hubbard in the Slack chat, I was thinking of like the Cardinals right tackle or something or whatever, or former right tackle. I don't even know. Okay, so that one's off the board. Obviously, Washington's already stacked up there. The Colts do have money. Detroit, San Francisco, probably not. Chargers, probably not. Browns already have Clowney and Garrett, but like those top four, like the Broncos, they're
Jaguars, Broncos, Panthers, Jets.
So the
Those all
Broncos
make a
and
lot of
Panthers
sense.
are probably a no, given that who they have there.
Mm-hmm.
Injuries are always a big deal too. He could wait out for injuries and make a team, more desperate.
The Patriots honestly would be interesting.
Wouldn't be the first time
Belichick goes back and brings someone back. That'd be
Yeah.
fascinating. The interesting thing about Chandler Jones is I think people view him, so like he continuously gets brought up by other players as being one of the most underrated pass rushers in the NFL. And I definitely think at this point, like the number of times we talk about him being underrated maybe means he's not underrated anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But he's been good, but he hasn't been great.
Yeah.
What's like the value for him? Because you look at a guy like JJ Watt who comes in. JJ Watt as their only pass rusher is a little scary. You definitely like the idea of having him with Chandler Jones, but I don't know that Chandler Jones is maybe top 15 to 20.
It makes a lot of sense for Arizona to figure out how to get this thing done. He also has a big enough cap hit where an extension probably helps Arizona, right? Because you're talking, I think, in the 21 million range for his certain. So he's actually if they can get him like 3-year deal. The issue is that Jones. So he was worth like in 2019 when he played a full season, he was worth, if you take WAR and you multiply it by how much each WAR costs, which is sort of how you get surplus value. He was worth about $15 million, which is about what he was paid in 2019. The issue then the next year is he's barely on the field.
Yep.
He was paid $21 million. So you're looking at a surplus value of negative $20 million or so.
Not good.
Like that's not great. And he is streaky, right? So like after joining Arizona, you have 2 seasons above like with really good WAR. Then you have an 18 season where he wasn't good at all. And then you have a 19 season where he was amazing and last year's hurt. Like you just don't know what you're getting here. Some players though, like as they age and you like mess with their role a little bit, can offer value. And like I think if I'm Arizona, here's just a small question: like, what do you think Arizona's end game is here? Because Cliff doesn't have that much time. Mm-hmm. They're a win now team,
right?
Even though they're 4th place in their division and betting odds right now. What do you think? I mean, I don't know. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them not to try.
Yeah, I don't think it makes a ton of sense for them not to try and keep him around. I think Cliff probably wants them to keep him around, right? Because if you trade him for like some draft pick, that he might not be there to see that player get drafted. I mean, you look at his PFF grade, as you mentioned. So 2016, 2017, PFF grade of pass rush grade of around 85, and you mentioned over 0.2 of a win above replacement. He was a surplus value in the positive direction for the Cardinals. And in 2019 had a pass rush grade of 90, his highest grade of his career, and was very, very good. Had almost 80 pressures.
The one that makes you wonder. And again, like I'm not here to try to understand player psyche, but the year that the Cardinals were truly the worst team in the NFL, he had his worst season for the team. Like, and he played almost 1,000 snaps. Talking about 42 pressures. He did have a decent amount of sacks, but like he was not as productive down for down.
Yep.
So if you're a team that's like boom or bust, let's say you are Jacksonville and you want to say, okay, I'm going to bring him in to be like I'm going to bring him, and Jason Fitzgerald talked about this a lot, where you pay a younger player rookie contract and pair him with a veteran on a bigger contract. Mm-hmm. If he wants to go be one of the cornerstone pieces of like a Jacksonville team, Jacksonville might not be good some of those years. Right. And you wonder if you're getting any value out of him in those years. Whereas if he goes to a contender right away, you're probably assured that he's going to give you great snaps, but he's going to have to fit in. And if you're Jones, you're going to have to probably take less. Like if you're Jones, you could probably ask for more money out of the Jaguars and the Jetses of the world than you probably could out of the, let's say you talk about Dolphins, you probably can't ask for as much out of the Dolphins given that they had to give up a lot to get you.
Right.
And our own Austin Gale was the one that said a good fit for Xavier Howard would be the Arizona Cardinals. That might be like the blockbuster trade we eventually see.
Yeah, I mean, if that were the case, doesn't that feel like a win for the Cardinals?
Yeah, the problem is you just don't like. So now your defensive line is what? Because they lost Reddick, who had a great year and a contract year. He was really bad before then. You have Watt there.
Yep.
you're really your front seven is
not
two
great.
is 2 first round like raw linebackers, Watt and a bunch of nobodies.
I mean,
and then,
you're basically hoping Watt can play and that Marcus Golden
yeah,
like has a career year. But you look on the outside and you go, man, I mean, they've got Malcolm Butler, who is your number one guy. You have Robert Alford, who like, man, that's like very scary. Those are your two corners.
And Alford, I don't even know, like, did they resign it? Because he hasn't played since, so and then you have Darqueze Dennard, you have as an inside player, you have Byron Murphy, who, we liked a lot coming out of Washington, but has been kind of butt since joining the team. So, man, it's probably incumbent upon you to figure it out because it's not looking great after Jones there on the outside. You do have flexibility with Simmons and Collins though,
and Budda Baker. Like I think you could have a nice defense there with a
Budda, big fan of PFF.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, oh man, it's super super strange. As if we had something against Budda Baker. I love Budda Baker actually.
Yeah, that was great.